everyone.
Hey.
Hey everyone. It's VHS Massacre Radio. I'm your host, Tom Seymour.
And I'm your other host, Ken Powell.
And we're live from the back of the old video store.
Yeah, I think there's some guy back there still in the store.
Yeah, I think he's taking a long time putting that tape back.
Yeah, which one do you think he picked up?
I think he was taking Beetlejuice. Yeah,
Beetlejuice. This is guy's 8th time renting that.
I know.
What's going on?
Keeps taking it out over and over again. So I was talking to my brother Bruce about this image. I think this is Terryville Fun Stuff Video.
Oh, nice. And for people that don't know, your brother owned Fun Stuff, right?
Yes, he owned a chain of video stores, in its height about a dozen, and it was called Fun Stuff Video.
Nice.
So I grew up watching those movies.
Did you used to work there? Or I know you worked at a Blockbuster, right?
Yeah, I worked at a Blockbuster first, actually. And then as Bruce's business grew, eventually I worked for him.
Was there anything ever like really weird that was rented from you? Like, I don't know, was there just like a weird customer? Or?
Well, yeah, there's weird customers. We had an adult section, so yeah,
Nice.
we get to weird customers. But equally as weird at Blockbuster. I remember this one guy came into Blockbuster Video and he was renting. He was looking for. Well, this is how he said. He's like, "Do you have anything harder, more harder?" And he was holding up like one of those mystery suspense things. So he was looking for pornography at Blockbuster, and there wasn't a porno section. That mystery suspense was about
as close to get. That's weird. Like, I would have never picked it out. I'm sure that there might have been like those Sports Illustrated, like VHSs or something, like this, but much harder.
Yeah.
Penetration.
Yeah.
You know what they mean?
Or some Playboy thing or something, maybe.
Yeah.
You know?
But yeah, mystery suspense, like I'm trying to think. Romancing the Stone. No, that's not a mystery suspense.
Well, there was this era where it was very like, I can't think of an example.
Oh, Basic Instinct.
Yes, there was a whole slew of that type of thing. Like they would weave in like a cop storyline, but it was a pretty good excuse for nudity.
Yeah, trying to sell the sex hard.
Stuff. Yeah. So it was weird because it was just as trashy, but somehow had a better, like an air of credibility.
Some prestige.
Yeah.
Pornography didn't get.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I think Eric Roberts was in quite a few of those.
Nice.
Probably Lorenzo Lamas.
Yeah.
Yep.
The golden heyday for softcore porn.
Yes.
I don't even know if there's still like an industry for that anymore.
Yeah, softcore. Yeah, I don't know. That is pretty fascinating. Though they're trash cinema, you kind of got all your horror themes, and you got some nudity. That was a nice stew. But as far as the mystery suspense, it was unusual because it's not like you were getting it wasn't like you were watching like some like Chinatown or something with some brilliant noir plot line. It was just kind of like dumpy, silly plot
police
lines.
Detective and police detective banging the hooker to
lingerie and a lot of anyway.
Well, going back to the softcore thing though, I wonder like if the industry for that, because if you look at it, like softcore I think was mostly kind of targeted towards married couples, but they didn't want to get into the hardcore stuff that probably had family.
Yeah.
But they could go to the video store or like tune into Cinemax, Skinemax, and like watch a little bit, and then go out to the bedroom. But then they can easily get rid of it out of their house. Yeah. Where the hardcore stuff, I think if you're buying the hardcore stuff, or you're into that, you're buying it and you're keeping it in your home.
Yes.
And it's probably more single man. So, but the hardcore stuff has definitely moved over to the internet. I mean, it's.
Oh yeah, why have any evidence of that? And if you look at some of the statistics on the amount of streaming that makes up pornography, it's pretty crazy. It's a large percentage of internet traffic.
Yeah. Again, porno leading the way in technology advances. They're kind of like the army.
Well, right. Well, I mean, they got into 3D like right away, like virtual 3D, all that stuff. And so, it's definitely fascinating. It's definitely something that it's like people don't talk about that much. Though apparently in academia, there are hundreds and hundreds of papers written on pornography phenomenon, things like that. So it's not like it's not studied, but It's definitely a large part of the internet that like no one talks about.
No, absolutely not. But yeah, it's fascinating. Like, you know, in terms of like we review VHS here, and VHS and pornography is kind of like which one came first, or I mean, they kind of like they coexist and they correlate together.
Yeah, well, that was the big the misunderstanding about the VHS era is, and I've heard people say this, and it's not exactly right. They said, well, VHS had pornography, whereas Sony Beta didn't allow that, and so that's what killed Beta. But it actually wasn't. People cite it kind of incorrectly as porno and being available on VHS made VHS popular. That was like a small piece, and the other piece was that a VCR was half the price, and the tapes would run, like the long play tapes would run for like 8 hours versus I think Sony was like either 4 or 6.
Yeah,
so
I feel like pornography was kind of like the fuse was already kind of lit on VHS, but they were like the gasoline you just threw on it and just like, whoa.
Yeah, it definitely mattered, but it's misquoted as being the determining factor. It was really, and think about this too. If you back then, at the end of the day, whatever $600 beta deck versus a $300 VCR. Who's going to be able to afford that? Of course, VHS won, and that was one of the main factors with the cost of what you're going to play the thing on. It'd be like if a Xbox was $600 instead of $300. What do you think would sell better?
Well, it's kind of funny. When the Xbox first came out, the one it was close to $600.
Okay.
And PlayStation 4 was, I think, a little bit cheaper, and they have won this generation of console wars. With the Nintendo Switch doing pretty healthy as well. But,
yeah, that's actually surprising that it's hanging in there.
Yeah, I mean, I own one, and it again is kind of. I'm not huge into Nintendo as like some people, but I've had like one of my favorite games I've played in years is the Zelda game that's on it. It's just, if you love Zelda and you love open world, it's like the combination of both things, and it's really well done. And there's a few other little quirky games like the wife and I will play on it. It's just I don't play it still, not as much like as the Xbox or the PlayStation. That's just me. I know a lot of other people are like, I see it in the school all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great portable device. If you think about contemporary handheld games, it's one of the only like new, very good handhelds.
Yeah.
Because I was doing some research on it because I was looking into what am I going to do for mobile gaming, because I'm flying like to Greece, so I'm taking like this 10-hour flight, and so I was looking at the portable devices. I think Vita, somehow they're still selling those things.
Yeah.
And you could hook it, I guess, to your PlayStation Plus. But people talk about it as it's a thing of the past,
Yeah, I owned one for a moment in time a couple of years ago, and I played Last of Us for the first time on the PlayStation Vita, and I really liked that, being able to play PlayStation 3 era titles on a handheld system was really cool. But again, it was like it wasn't enough new content that was like I think worth going out and buying it. And compared to the Nintendo 3DS, it's it's a little bit more expensive.
Yeah, but it's got the nice huge screen. It's got manual controls, which is the main. Say about this is a $150 Kindle Fire 10-inch. Processor's pretty fast. It's got a good amount of space on it. It's 32 gigs. I threw another 32 gig SD card in here. But you can download the Google Play Market, and which is better, but the Kindle Fire Market by itself is not great for games. Just not a strong showing in portable games.
It's kind of surprising because I think Kindle. I mean, I don't know who has the biggest foot in that market. I mean, I would have to suspect it's probably the Apple iPad and probably the Kindle. As I don't know which one's one or two. I feel like the Kindle would have a bigger share of it just because they have so many devices and they're constantly updating it, and it's more affordable.
Way more affordable. Yeah. Less than half the price.
But you figure with I would assume is a healthy market there, that they would do a little bit more with pumping out some games.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the Droid. If once you're in the Droid market, you're fine. You have some Grand Theft Auto games, and there's a lot more advanced apps. But a lot of these are very surface. But some of the I have Chrono Trigger on here and
Oh, nice.
some some other games like that, which is pretty cool. There's a couple Final Fantasy games and stuff, but yeah, but yeah, as far as handhelds, it's like it seems like the sort of best contemporary handheld right now, at least.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, well, should we talk about? Well, I guess on the subject of video stores, we might have some footage of the last Blockbuster video store, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think it might have been Professor James Richardson who sent a like a group text to us, or a group Facebook message about an article where the second to the last Blockbuster up in Alaska had just closed, leaving just one remaining Blockbuster franchise in the United States.
Yep. This guy Tom in Oregon reached out to us, and we might set up a deal where he gets some footage and interviews for us until we can travel out there ourselves and check it out in person. But that'd be pretty great. So hopefully that's going to happen. It'd be interesting to pop in and see. I mean,
well, our last visit to Blockbuster was not like wasn't the greatest of trips.
yeah,
I'll just say that it was kind of depressing.
I believe that was the last Blockbuster video in the 5 boroughs, at least, in New York City.
Yeah, we were, if you haven't seen our dog VHS Massacre, yeah, go see it now. You can see the scene that we're talking about. But we strolled up on it, and like we thought it was going to be closed.
Yeah.
I mean, we thought it was closed because a lot of them had just shuttered the door, so we were just going to gather footage in front of like a closed Blockbuster. And there were shutters down, like on half of it, but we went inside and it was open. They like openly allowed. We didn't even ask permission to film. I don't think the employees. I mean, Blockbuster employees. I don't know if they're like the most aggressive out there, anyways. But they allowed us to film in there, and it was just kind of like we were shocked about like a lot of different things. Like the core of the the video store was like nothing.
Yeah, the core was lost essentially. Like the library or history of film, the middle of the store was essentially like replaced with just like 100 copies of Dark Knight, 100 copies of I don't know, some Red by Bruce Willis. It's like just stuff that obviously Christopher Nolan film was a good quality film, but like to take the place of the history of film is not a good thing. And so you could kind of get, I mean, obviously you understand like the technological jumps forward and why people don't rent, but so you could tell it's a franchise on its last foot because there's no like ability to delve into the history of film. It's like they just have to be, have to pick the most popular films because everyone who pops in the store has to buy something because I'm sure their foot traffic is terrible. I'm sure the sales are way down.
Yeah, because if it's curated in the right way, being in New York City, in Queens, there's a good, healthy cinephile population here. And if they would have spent more time, I think, working on that core of the library, putting more obscure films or films that that make up, like you say, the history of movies, I think it would have sustained itself longer. Not to say like we're on our last legs of the video store, unfortunate as it may be, but not to say like eulogizing and like there won't be anymore, because there absolutely will be video stores, just not in that blockbuster Hollywood movie type era where there was like 3 video stores within like a 2-block radius of each other. You won't see that.
Yeah, but you'll see it still like seemingly in neighborhoods, like I guess you call them ethnic neighborhoods. Like Jackson Heights would have a Spanish only video store. There were a few video stores that we saw. It was like Chinatown would have like one video store, and they'd specialize in stuff you couldn't get here still. So I mean, I think there's always going to be pockets of that, you know.
Like I believe that I think it was a Korean video store that we went into, but they specialize in like Korean soap operas and dramas, and they would have like all these TV series, which is funny because a couple of years ago there was this kind of big explosion of Korean dramas here in the United States where people, you know, that weren't of Korean descent were actually getting into these shows because they're kind of ridiculous. I mean, ridiculous in a soap opera type of way, very melodramatic. I saw, I think on Joe McHale show, he ran out these like series of clips of where like people were getting run over in all these soap operas from Korea, which is kind of funny. But yeah, there was that Korean video store.
Well, and even in Astoria, which is heavily Greek, you would have a couple holdouts that were selling, you know, pretty obscure stuff. So, yeah, and I guess that's the sort of charm in New York. They're probably always going to be like one or two knocking around, you know.
Yeah, kind of like the you know, the American drive-in movie theater. Like Joe Bob talked about, like the drive-in isn't dead. There's like probably I think close to 200 or so drive-ins still in the United States, and many of them are thriving because there, you know, fewer of them, and they're still an attraction of, you know, taking the family a carload and going to the movies for like $20, and everybody gets to see the film.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love it if I lived out in the suburbs and I had a car. I would do it. I know Southington, Connecticut has a functional drive-in. One of my friends posted pictures of him at the drive-in. That's great. You know, it's really wonderful.
Yeah, there's one in Poughkeepsie, not too far from here, within a, you know, not even half a day's drive, like a couple-hour drive. Go to Poughkeepsie and you know, do the drive-in. For any New Yorkers that are you know, listening,
people crave it too. I mean, it's pretty obvious. In New York, with things like rooftop films, or when they play films in the park and they project them on big sort of inflatable screens, it's pretty clear that there's still a strong desire to watch a film. Though I will say it seems like it's going to rally around sort of nostalgia, you know.
Yeah.
And they do clever things. Like I saw one, it was Enter the Dragon. And someone in this orchestra was able to rescore the whole film.
Oh, that's
so they were able to find an isolated audio track, so there's no score, and then they added their own score. It was gorgeous, you know, it was really brilliant. So that kind of a thing, I think, is there's a lot of creative things you could do, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're here in Astoria, Queens, and the Astoria Park. They do summer movies in the park. And they do like a nice little combination of things. It's mostly slanted towards families, you know, but there'll be like E.T. or I think last year they might have done Jaws, which might not be the most kid-friendly thing. But then they'll throw in something like Casablanca, I think is one of the films this year. And then I think Guardians of the Galaxy is another choice. No, Black Panther. Black Panther, they're going to be screening that in the next couple of weeks. So they throw something, you know, a little modern out there.
Yeah, I wish that you could have like a straight up grindhouse, like not a grindhouse, but a proper sort of drive-in that would play trash cinema. But I just I don't know if it could thrive. But I would just love it if you could go up and watch like Hellraiser and then like, I don't know, Slumber Party Massacre or something like that.
Yeah, know? That would be awesome. I think there's only a few places in the United States I think where that could work. One of them being New York City, but to create a drive-in in the middle of the city is like...
Yeah, playing this, like, horror films.
Yeah, it'd be hard to get the property and, you know, but I think maybe in LA you could possibly get a grindhouse.
What about a haunted-themed drive-in where, like, the drive-up is all weird and has crazy monsters that jump out, animatronic, and then you go and you watch a film. I don't know. I think there's something there.
That is something there. I mean, that could be, and it could also vary, because if you're doing, let's say like the 8 o'clock showing would be more of the family oriented. You could do like, I don't know, Monster Squad or Frankenstein, something that you and the kids could watch. And when you go through it at the 8 o'clock showing, it's like, you know, kind of kid friendly, scary. Then if you come in for the midnight films, it's like, you know, the experience is like way more intense. You got guys with chainsaws, like, you know, coming up to your car, and then
an escape room. You could do a bunch of
That's a
weird
really
stuff.
cool idea. I mean, if the New York had the real estate in the city, or in Queens or Brooklyn or the Bronx, like that would be, I think that could be a success. I mean, that'd be
There you
fun.
go. Yeah, if you could get the foot traffic, you know.
Yeah, yeah, that's the big thing about here in the city. Like driving a car can be kind of a pain in the ass, and that's part of the drive-in. Unless you do the thing where you have the faux cars that are like like I think there is a couple movie theaters that or drive-ins that do this where like you have a car kind of cut in half and it's got the front and the
Oh,
back
you could
seat
just sit in
and
there.
it's like a convertible, so you just sit in there. So maybe something like that if you're going to do it here in the city, that would work.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea.
And
Um,
don't you guys go out there and do it. This is Tom and my idea.
yeah, when we get like $50 million, that's the first thing we'll do.
That Donald Trump money.
Yep. So should we get into the movie of the week?
Yes, Undefeatable. How did this one you come across? How did you find this thing?
Okay, well, Undefeatable has, and this is sort of unfair. I'm going to say first of all that I actually really enjoyed Undefeatable. Undefeatable has this unfair criticism of having one of the worst fight scenes in history, and the truth is, Cynthia Rothrock, who is a total badass,
Multiple black belts.
multiple black belts, just a action film superstar of the 70s and 80s and 90s, and actually still today. Sorry, she's excellent. But so it's known for the final fight scene, which just has a myriad of things that I would say are more goofy than the rest of the film.
Yeah, I mean, not to say that there's a lot of other goofy things in the movie.
Yes.
Again, I think I texted you this as I was in the middle of watching it, which is funny because I think you were in the middle of watching it too. It reminds me a lot of Samurai Cop, and I absolutely love Samurai Cop, but I will never argue that it's like a masterpiece in the same way that Citizen Kane's a masterpiece.
No, okay, so I mean the setup is basically Cynthia Rothrock is this like essentially like a pit fighter.
Yeah.
Set up fights and then she fights. She's trying to put her sister through college, and basically there's a series of murders that starts happening in a really crazy and violent and ridiculous way, and this sort of cop has to come along and sort of intervene. So it's kind of them in a weird way. They team up
to take down. Let me see, get his name right. Our bad guy's name is Stingray.
Stingray. Oh, do you want to talk about the origin of him going over the line, or?
Well, I guess we could go back to the very. This reminds me of like the after-school specials of his mother and father. Like, I guess it's his father. They're having this argument, but you never see them. You see him as a little kid, and they're having this argument about like it's either me or the boy, and so I guess the father abandons him, and he's like, "No, father."
And I guess the mother does too, right?
Yeah.
So he's like, and okay, so what happens? It's that first of all, he kind of looks like, oh God, who's that singer? He looks not Steve Perry, but he's got this sort of Barry Manilow sort of. It's
not Rod Stewart.
A Rod Stewart-ish, yeah, like that sort of almost afro thing people had in the 80s.
Yeah, my dad had one.
Yeah, it was a glorious mullet.
Yeah,
but a moist mullet
that he was spraying. I don't know if that was hairspray. It's like whenever he was making his transformation into being like, there's this very awful rape scene that for something that doesn't contain nudity and is nowhere near as graphic as maybe some of the things you like. The Game of Thrones rape scene always comes to mind of I can't remember her name, but Sophia Turner's character. But it's very uncomfortable watching it just because of I think him as an actor and like his look, and then she's got tears coming down her face that also make it like just it's really uncomfortable. Most of the time they don't include tears in rape scenes, not like these kind of tears, and I don't know, it's just very rough.
Yeah.
And then she makes the right decision by leaving this creep because I mean his job is to beat people in these death matches. He's fighting in like real death matches where Our other character, Cynthia Rothrock, is what's her name? Christy?
Oh yeah, Christy Jones.
Yeah, Christy Jones. Where she's fighting in these matches where if your hands touch the ground, you lose. So there's no like fighting to the death.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still some stakes. They're fighting over money, but so you got these two different fighters that are like, one's fighting to the death, the other one's fighting for cash.
What I found disturbing was that when he came home from work and from fighting, and he was like, "I'm in the mood," and she's like, "No," and then he starts accosting her, and he's starting to have flashbacks, but it's like flashbacks of like sweaty, muscular guy, and he's kicking him in the head, and there's like blood spurting, and they keep cutting back to him, and it's really weird because it's like he's getting sexually aroused by his fight scenes.
And like I said, these are death fights, so he's flashing back, and in the sexual, he becomes a serial killer, but at the moment he's not really a serial killer. He's just a guy that fights in these death matches, and it's also like there's a steak that was being cooked that they'll cut to. And it's like, it's raw on one side and it's, a little seared on the other. And after the rape scene, he just grabs it right out of the pan with the one side raw.
Yeah.
Just starts eating it. I'm like.
Also, I don't know if you remember, the music in the sexual assault scene is romantic music.
Yes.
It's totally off. It's really weird, actually. Because it's what you would imagine as sort of like porno music or mystery suspense or even like, From the Room when they, Tommy Wiseau's The Room, it's sort of like sexy music and you're like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah, if their goal is to completely unnerve you and make you as uncomfortable as they can by watching something that like, there's no penis or vagina action, there's no nudity. I mean, I think her boob it's just like some cleavage shots, but
it's not cool. And if it was Oliver Stone or something, you'd be like, okay, he's fucking around. It's like that scene in Natural Born Killers where it's the father like sexually assaulting his daughter and there's like a laugh track in the background. This is not that. No. This is like they maybe were trying to soften the harshness of the scene. And after it takes place, she leaves a Dear John letter and she rolls. He picks up a little music box, listens to the music play and has a flashback of when his mother left him. He then has a psychotic break, and now cannot distinguish any brunette woman in a dress from his. Yeah.
Now, any specific dress? A floral dress.
Floral dress.
Well, he keeps calling her Anna, which is, I think, the name of his wife. Yeah. But there is mentions of his mother too, which I don't know if there's like haywires in his brain that they're trying to say like the man's lost it and he's going on this rampage.
Apparently, she writes in the Dear John letter that he used to call her mother a lot. Oh. So clearly there was some confusion. Maybe you're supposed to assume from the violent fight that maybe this aggravated the situation. Unfortunately, in the fight they show, he totally dominates. He's never even touched. He just, rolls over this guy and that's it. So I think if they showed some blunt force trauma to the head, that would maybe go a long way to you understanding why maybe he had a break.
The psychotic break, which definitely becomes. So he goes out and he's tormenting these women. Well, he's not tormenting. He's killing these women that he, like you say, the brunette. They wear floral dresses, and it's weird that like when he goes to kidnap these women, they're like it's all like during the daytime. They're all with like their man, so you get this fight scenes all the time, which every woman that he basically wants to kill is with a man that knows karate or that's kind of funny. Yeah. But also the women are very like encouraging of their men to get into these fights. They're all like kick his ass.
And only one of the victims also knows martial arts, and she gets into a little bit, but.
Well, that's Christy's sister, right? Without spoiling too much.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's spoilers. Her sister's killed because that kind of sets up the rest of the plot of the movie. But it's weird though. There's this scene like after the first murder where they find they previously had found the first victim in a porta-john with her eyes missing, And then there's this next scene with this other cop who one of the main cops. He's doing like practicing his kung fu with another cop, and then this other cop walks into the scene and is like, "What are you guys doing? There's a serial murderer out there." I'm like, only one person's dead. There's no serial murder. You just spoiled like what's going to happen because there have been no other murders to this point.
Yeah, that's true.
It's kind of funny. Like it's and then there's a lot of these little things. Like I say, it's very reminiscent of Samurai Cop and Miami Connection in the way that, but with some very cool fight stunts. Like the first guy that gets into a fight with Stingray because of his woman, he gets thrown off like this second floor parking garage, and he actually does legitimately fall on top of a van and bounces off onto the ground, and you can see it in real time. It's like, and there's no cushion on the van top.
Yep.
So it's a nice little, like probably 15, maybe close to 20 feet fall.
Yeah, there's a few things in this film. I think that's why I would add this. That's why I would say it's not fair to say that this film had some of the worst fight scenes ever, because if you look at Samurai Cop, which I also love, I love that film. Like those fight scenes are horrible.
Oh
like,
yeah.
That's part of the charm of it, but it doesn't like. In some certain cases, Cynthia Rothrock has some really incredible martial arts moves. Mm-hmm. There's some very cool stuff in there, but then there's some very hokey stuff in there too. So it's sort of a mixed batch. But it's very easy for people now to shit on films like this. But if you look at the amount of money and effort went into this has got to be like probably $200,000 to maybe $300,000 film,
Yeah, definitely. And if you try to recreate the same movie today by doing all the practical fights, that's another thing that I really love about these 80s and 90s films, is that the acting, it gives it a certain charm to me that elevates it beyond anything that's mediocre, because mediocre is to me the worst, absolute worst place that you can be as a film. Like either you need to be creating like masterpieces, or not intentionally trying to create this movie, but whenever it is created, it works in a different way. It's so enjoyable. I was laughing again. This, like I say, this isn't a laughter making fun of the movie, but there's a lot of hilarious scenes. The opening scene where these guys are robbing the store, and they fill the movie with a lot of these like one-liners that are gonna like be Terminator type lines, like Stallone or Schwarzenegger trying to deliver.
Yeah, well, okay, so I guess it's this deliberate twist where the guy is cutting out the woman's eyes, the victims. Did they ever say why he was doing that?
No, there's no real explanation. At least I didn't catch it. I actually watched it twice. I never caught any real reason why he was doing it, which would have, again, maybe a superior movie would have kind of like, he was doing it because his mothers used to put contacts in her eyes or something. I don't know.
I don't think we ever got that reason. But he had this fish tank full of eyeballs, which was kind of fascinating. And he did sort of have this dark factory lair, which I didn't understand why he had that, although it looked great for the end of the film. So the end of the film is this sort of face-off. Cynthia Rothrock's character has a broken arm. So she sort of comes into the fight scene halfway, which is particularly hilarious because at some point it's just like her and the other guy just start kicking the shit out of this guy. It's this one-on-one fight, and she just kind of rolls in and just starts kicking him in the back and shit like that. So there's something very funny about that. There is a scene at some point, the main character elbows the villain and knocks him into, it looks like a coat hook on a wall.
I guess, like, yeah.
And then he blinds him, and he's still like doing all these very formal, very stiff, karate moves. And there's something humorous about it. Like the fighting in this last scene seems stiffer than the rest. And like the way the cop, for no reason, the cop slowly like sits there for like 2 seconds. And then makes a weird noise like, eh, and like slowly rips off his shirt. Of course, he's completely oiled. And
Bruce Lee fans for sure.
Yeah, it just, in the context of the 80s, that makes total sense. But now you're looking at it and like, man, there's a lot of awkward staring into the camera for 2 or 3 seconds and slowly ripping off clothes. And then at some point they kick the shit out of him and hook his other eye onto some what was that?
A meat hook or
meat hook machine, and it reminded me of the end of Cobra. The end of Cobra, Stallone like puts that big guy and he hooks him on a thing, and then the button gets turned on and it starts moving forward. But it just seemed particularly unnecessarily brutal to do to someone that you're gonna arrest more than likely.
Yes,
because he turns on the machine, like someone hits their face on a meat hook, and he's like, ah, and you're like, you hit the on button, and he gets raised up 10 feet in the air by his eye, and moved across 20 feet this way, and he's still alive seemingly.
Yeah, he has the survivor instinct.
Yeah,
I would say Stingray, not one to be fucked with.
Yeah, hilarious.
Yeah, absolutely hilarious. I mean, like a couple of my favorite moments. There's a scene, like again back in the beginning of the movie, these guys go into the store to rob it, and the main cop guy that we were talking about comes into the store. He says a couple of one-liners. He goes back and forth with this guy. He kicks their ass, and then he pulls out a gun on this one guy and has it pointed at his dick. He's like, "I'll blow your dick off," or something like that. And the other guy's like, "I'll sue you for police brutality." And the thing is, not once did he ever say that he was a police, and they never once treated him as a police. There was no badges on any of these guys, which is I thought was hilarious. Like, how do you know he's a cop? I mean, he just kicked your ass pulling out the gun. That was hilarious. And then another thing that I thought was funny is that the Cynthia Rothrock's character Anna, she's in like this kind of gang with a bunch of these other Asian guys. And there's a couple of different funny moments, but I think one of the funniest ones is at the end of the movie, whenever they announce, like, we're paying for college, or she's paying for college for all of them, which they had set up earlier in the movie about them not getting into college because they're too smart, which was one of their lines. And then the other cop's like, "You're going to college too, Anna," which is like, it's like, okay.
It's like, yeah, it's like a Christmas special. Like, everyone's going to college. Yeah. And her sort of co-gang members were these sort of like, I don't know, mild-mannered, like, they didn't seem particularly gang-like. They wore the wet leather jackets, and they're all, yeah,
they're dorks. They were dorks.
Yeah, they were all dorks, yeah.
There was nothing like truly badass about any of them. Like you say, the Cynthia Rothrock's character was doing all the fighting in these not death pit things, but these fights, these organized fights. So she probably was the biggest badass of the bunch. It was just kind of funny. You had this, I don't know, 130-pound white woman kind of in charge of this gang of these Asian kids. Just kind of funny.
It's unusual to say the least, but it was. I mean, I think the thing about Cynthia Rothrock is that she just looks awesome on camera. Yeah. And I started thinking, I was like, I've seen her in a bunch of stuff, and I had to think about it. It's because they used to put her in a lot of like Hong Kong martial arts films, but they were foreign films, but she would always pop up because she was just a badass. But she's popped up in so many films. They did a one called Mercenaries, and it was all like it was essentially Expendables.
Oh.
And it was all female mercenaries. It had her, and I think it had that stunt woman from Death Proof and
Zoe Bell.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Which I just watched her in a movie with Wesley Snipes the other day.
Really?
Not a very good movie. But yeah, Zoe Bell is a badass. She's a badass stunt woman that's been in film for probably maybe close to 2 decades. I don't want to say that she's been around for that long, but for a while now.
Yeah, but I think it's a type. Cynthia Rothrock is a very unusual type that I don't think you see nowadays. There was something sort of I don't know how to say this. There's something very sweet about her voice, right? Yeah. She had this like cute voice, right? But she was like a real force, like a physical force, highly trained martial artist. And
I was reminded of like Linda Hamilton, but Linda Hamilton is she could actually really kick ass in real life.
yeah, but you just don't see that style. It's not common. Like you'd have maybe a female hero, like, but Linda Hamilton at least can, has this sense that she's sort of like no nonsense.
Yeah.
But Cynthia Rothrock had a certain like sweetness to her.
Yeah.
And it just was really unusual. But it was really cool to see, and I'm like, we don't really have that. It's rare anyway. So I
Yeah.
thought she was a unique talent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, of this movie, probably one of the best parts in all kinds of different ways. Being a real fighter and acting wise, I think she probably by far had at least seemed like the most experience to me versus
of everyone else.
yeah,
In that film, yeah.
besides the Stingray, not a thespian in any way, and
But
the other
looked the part again.
yeah.
Just jacked out of his mind.
Yeah, you absolutely could feel he'd feel at home in Bloodsport whenever they're getting ready for these huge fights and they do like the montage of all the fighters fighting.
Yeah.
He could easily have fit in one of those and been killed at some point.
Yeah, he'd be like a first or second round thug.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Overall, I'd say I thought it was great. I was so happy that it was so fun. Like when I was watching it, all the bad cop interactions that seem to always be missing a piece, like you said, like mentioning serial killer when it wasn't established, not mentioning your cop, but everyone treating you as such, and just a myriad of quirks that made it more. You could see the seams in the production of it and understand that it was lower budget and direct to video, and that's why I loved it. To see the seams in the work. So
that reminded me of one other scene that I thought was kind of hilarious as well. It's whenever they, I think this is going back to the girl in the porta-john that was with their eyeballs removed, the first victim. The two cops are there, and the one's like, I need to get all these journalists out of here. I need to our cop make sure they get in here and take pictures. I'm like, that's kind of a given, but collect all the evidence and whatever. And then he told the other cop, make sure that happens, and then they both turn around and walk away. I'm like, shouldn't the other guy have stayed because you told him to make sure that it happens? I just thought it was funny. It's like they both walked away because it's that scene you'll see in like CSI Miami where David Caruso, there's always a thing where he puts on the sunglasses and says some kind of cool line and then walks off camera. It's supposed to have been like that kind of moment for that cop where he should have been the only one to walk off and the other guy stays because he is the badass of the two cops.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of hilarious, but there's a lot of these little moments, and like I say, yes, it's like going back to our Bronx trilogy. This one's, I think, a lot more steadiness in its enjoyability. Like there's a lot of stuff about those Bronx movies that I liked, but overall, I think this one had it was just kind of fun all the way through.
Yeah, and the ending had like two of the best one-liners. I think, did she say "keep an eye out"? Keep an eye out, Stingray.
Yeah.
And he's like, "See ya," and just a really bad read on the line, but just beautiful, just like so.
Matches with the rest of the
it's
film.
just perfect. Yeah. Like you couldn't. It's just something special, right? It's like it just was so funny,
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things like if that was the best take, I wonder what the other takes were like. But it was absolutely enjoyable. I had fun watching. Like I say, I watched it twice. I watched it yesterday in the evening, and I watched it again this morning. So, and it's still both enjoyable.
Both
times.
Yeah. So, we don't have a rating system, right? We just say.
No. It's great stuff. It's up there on YouTube. Just type in Undefeatable movie. It was, I think, the first one in my search. It's right there. Watch it. I wish there was like a better copy of it. Maybe one day they'll get around to a remaster of it.
Oh yeah, I'd buy that on Blu-ray. I think it's totally entertaining. But I'm looking through Cynthia Rothrock's catalog here. Lady Dragon 2, Rage of Honor 2, Rage of Honor, Lady Dragon, Angel Fury. There's a lot of films she does, Above the Law and Rapid Fire. Not the Above the Law and not the Rapid Fire. But 62 credits.
62 credits.
Yeah.
I mean,
as a martial artist.
Yeah, I was gonna say as a martial artist, because that's a very specific type of film that has its up and downs. I think in our world, or like they can fall out of favor, go away for a few years, and then they become like a hot commodity again. I'm not sure where martial art films fall at the moment. I don't think they're quite as hot as they were like maybe a few years ago when you had what's that movie where
Ip Man
Ip Man, and then the one where the guy's fighting in the hotel or the apartment building. Oh man, why am I blanking? The Raid.
Oh yeah,
like the Raid came out. Yeah, the Raid and Ip Man, they all came along around the same time. So it was like, this they got hot again. I think we might be in like one of the cooldown periods. But that's just saying, like, having 60 something plus films in that field, pretty awesome.
Yeah, I would, and actually this could fit into the VHS Massacre 2 sequel, it being us examining exploitation a little bit, and then martial arts being part of that. I wonder if we could snag a Cynthia Rothrock interview. That'd be pretty cool.
I was saying the same thing after I finished watching. I was like, she might be worth like getting on. If nothing else, she doesn't want to do the doc. Maybe we can get her on the show.
Yeah,
and talk about her experience and working on this movie and the others. I don't know. Maybe we can have that same samurai cop type of karma or charm or whatever it is, and then get an undefeatable part 2.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know. I don't know where the good guy is, the cop. I don't know what he's doing these days. But
yeah.
Cynthia Rothrock is definitely still working though.
Yes. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think she might do cons and stuff too, Comic Cons. I'd have to look, but it's possible. Well, that's all I got.
That's all I got.
Well, anyway, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Tom Seymour.
And before I sign off, you guys, if you're watching us on Twitch, like us and subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, also like it and subscribe and tell other people about it.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. We're trying to grow. The Podbean's pretty solid, but yeah, we're trying to grow our audience in other venues, so that'd be really great. Yeah, okay, thanks for listening.
And check you later.